don't hit that skip button because I have huge news for you. The Rewind of the Living Dead t-shirt lives. It is here. It is available to purchase. Oh yes, I'm not kidding. We finally got our Rewind of the Living Dead t-shirt out, and it's amazing. It is printed by the same company that prints for Cavity Colors and Fright Rags, which if you're a hardcore horror fan who buys a lot of horror t-shirts, I know I do, you know that's the very best and highest quality because we couldn't do anything less for our fans. It's an amazing full color design, designed by Jason Ragosta. It's very cool. It features a zombified myself, a zombified Damon, and it looks just like an awesome horror shirt because that's what we want, because we're horror fans too. So we wanted to make a t-shirt that you could really sink your teeth into. Go to rewindofthelivingdead.bigcartel.com. Again, that's rewindofthelivingdead.bigcartel.com to get your t-shirt today. Rewind of the Living Dead is a review show, so spoilers are ahead.
Even before The Nun was released in 2018, Conjuring universe architect James Wan was already discussing the possibility about an idea he had for the sequel that would continue the story about the demon nun Valak and the eventual ties to Lorraine Warren and the larger story happening in the films. Akilah Cooper, who also teamed with Wan on the recent film Megan, signed on to develop the script with Michael Chaves, who was previously at the helm for 2 other films in the Conjuring universe. He came on as the director, and the sequel now takes place 4 years after the original film, with Sister Irene traveling to France, where a priest was just murdered and an evil but familiar presence is starting to spread.
There has been an incident.
Killings across Europe.
You are the only person who has dealt with something like this.
What we're going after, it's unlike anything you've ever seen.
The Nun, Chapter 2, rated R, only in theaters September 8th.
In the latest episode of Rewind of the Living Dead, we take a deep dive on the latest film in the Conjuring universe as we review the 2023 sequel, The Nun 2. Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon Martin.
And I'm Patrick Guerra.
And Patrick, we are back for The Nun 2.
Damon, we are back in the Conjuring universe with its original sinner, Valak.
Yes.
Again. And I don't know how to get through this podcast, Damon, because truth be told, I think like almost all of it's in spoiler territory. The trailer doesn't really give you much. And does the movie give you much? You'll have to tune into spoilers to find out.
Let me start here. Okay, let me start here. The Nun. Okay, obviously we're talking spoilers for The Nun 1. We're not.
Yeah. You should know that we're spoiling that.
Okay. At the end of The Nun, you and I were already kind of confused about the ending with the whole, like, when she spits the Christ blood in Valak's face and Valak disintegrates, yet somehow still infects Maurice to live on. And we're kind of like, okay, but shouldn't like Jesus' blood, like, shouldn't that be what really a rat? I mean, it's Jesus. Like, they didn't go for like, I don't know, like Joseph's blood or one of the disciples. They went for Jesus. Like, that's the end all be all right there. You went for Jesus. You went for God. If that doesn't stop her, it doesn't stop it. I would say her, the demon. What is? Okay, so problem number 1 right there. But okay, moving on. She infected the nun thing. Valak infected Maurice. We find out at the end of the film he got infected. We saw the upside down cross. And then one thing I did credit the film for was the cool twist, which again, it bugged me when I did a little bit more exploring, was the tie into the original Conjuring film when the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren, were giving a speech and they talked about when they were going to work with an exorcism of a guy named Maurice, And it was they basically redid it from the original Conjuring. It was the same scene, but they redid it with the actor from The Nun, which that's the part that bugged me. I was like, oh, come on. Like, they've been the same guy. And it was like, oh my gosh, you used the same actor. But, and again, it's not the end of the world. But anyways, that little twist was kind of cool. I was like, what? You tied it into the next Conjuring film. You brought Maurice back. Like, okay, that's kind of cool, right? Like, that's kind of interesting. When they announced The Nun 2, I'm kind of thinking to myself, why? You just gave the entrance for The Nun to come back in the Conjuring universe, and you gave the tie-in for Maurice in The Conjuring. What else is there to say? Because, Patrick, if I'm being honest, The Nun didn't say much to begin with.
The Nun said very little.
And then they come back with The Nun 2. We're 5 minutes, we're not even 5 minutes, we're 5 minutes into this podcast, Patrick. I'm just going to say this right now. This was a money grab. This was a money grab. This is not inherent to the story. This is not a film that you need to help you understand the Conjuring universe better. You're not plugging any holes that needed filled. This is 100% pure profit. We want to make money. We don't have the Conjuring film ready to go yet. Let's throw out another Nun film. Because, Patrick, I don't understand. I didn't understand the point of the film going into it, and I really don't understand the point of the film coming out of it.
You do. Actually, you do. Because you and I grew up at a prime time for horror. Late 80s, early 90s. Money grabs were what you did when a franchise was out of steam. That's what you did with them. You just cooked more stuff up. Now, it's going to be so hard to really talk about the movie, like, because it's almost all spoilers. Like, it really is. But think about it. Jason takes Manhattan. Freddy's dead. Jesus Christ. Just saying those words makes me quiver in my boots. Like, many Halloween movies, many Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels, all of the Puppet Master sequels and the original Puppet Master, any of the Leprechauns. It's all just to get butts and seats. Now, here's the question is, why do butts get into seats for The Nun? Well, we said it last week, and I say it again here, and I stand by it. It's because the imagery of the nun itself, Valak, played by the great Bonnie Aarons, is so absolutely magnetic that you want to see it. You and I, at the end of last week's podcast, talking about the Nun, said we were weirdly ready for the Nun 2 and actually excited to see it. Why? Because anytime the Nun got on screen, it was great. When the Nun like fully realized itself and Valak was like in the room, the whole world turned on its axis. And I wanted more of that. And I was craving more of that. So I went, if the Nun 2 does anything right, it's going to be, they're going to go all in on Valak. I'm not saying what they did or did not, but that's why we showed up, because we're going to get into that in spoilers, whether they did or they did not. I got some positives, and I can say them here spoiler free. If you were to, I'm a guy who would love to direct a horror movie, Damon. You know that about me. If you were going to give me any piece of the Conjuring universe to direct, it would be a Nun movie. Because the Nun 2, much like the Nun 1, looks fantastic. It is gorgeous. It's wonderfully shot. Great locations. It looks like a big old studio movie, because that's what it is. It's Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers put Warner Brothers backing into it. So it looks and feels big. It's got scale. It's got, I think the effects were even better in this one, in my opinion. It's got scale. It's not, I know you like contained horror, and it's kind of contained because it's contained in a couple of locations, but it felt like I was crisscrossing Europe. It felt like I was in this location, then I was in that one, and everything looked great. And Michael Chaves is a good director, and everything is kind of like, it's all there, but under the surface, It's like a Hollywood backdrop. Like it looks great when you're walking through it. And then if you round a corner at just the wrong angle, there's nothing but a flat board behind it with some supports. Because this is what this is. This the Nun and is part of a franchise that is just trying to keep butts in seats, and bless their hearts, by the way, pun intended, because we want people to continue the theater going experience. We want people to continue to support horror. So I'm glad that these movies are made. I'm not sour that they're being made. I'm privileged and I'm happy to go to a movie, to give my money to the movies, because I want people to keep going to movies because I like it. It's the business I invested my life into. And so, yeah, I show up for a Nun movie, but I do expect, call me nuts, to get some Nun at some point. I'm not saying if we have or we haven't, but I bet you know in spoilers what we're going to be talking about. How about you, Damon?
Well, listen, what you said about there are positives about this movie. There are positives about this movie. It is an incredibly well shot movie. Michael Chaves did a great job, and credit to the cinematographer as well. It is an incredibly well acted movie. Thaisa Farmiga is an incredible actress. Also, Storm Reed, of course, who I love from Euphoria, she's in this movie. Everybody, they had a lot of children in this movie. A lot of the movie takes place at a girls' boarding school. The children, the young actors in this movie are really good. Like we've said this a million times. Sadly, children actors can kind of make or break a movie. All of the younger actors in this movie were fantastic, and I'll kind of give a spoiler right now. Like I will talk about that in best performance later. The effects were solid, as you said. They look like they upped the ante a little bit on the effects from the first one. Which I'll be honest, I didn't think the effects were bad in the first one. Like
no, just the snakes. We didn't like the snakes.
We didn't like the snakes. Snakes looked a little too CGI, a little too digital effects, a little too Flash in there. Or Morbius or whatever other bad digital effects movies we have. But yeah, like. All that's true. And I know I joke about this when I do listen to film review podcasts, because I love film beyond just horror films. Now horror is my favorite, but I do watch a lot of other films. And I notice a trend when people do that, when they're complimenting everything around the movie, but not the movie itself. That's like the backhanded way of giving like a compliment without like actually, tearing down the movie itself. Because I say this all the time, Patrick, whether we like a movie or not, I really do encourage people to go out and watch it. Just because we don't particularly like something doesn't mean you won't like something. Here's my biggest problem with The Nun 2, beyond anything else. And I know I said it's a money grab, and I'm being honest when I say that. That's what it feels like. This is, if I'm remembering correctly, the 9th film in the Conjuring universe at large. Conjuring 1, 2, and 3. Right. We got Curse of La Llorona, the Annabelle films, and now this second Nun film. Now, do all the films tie together in some way, shape, or form? Sorta. I mean, I've never seen the Curse of La Llorona. I don't really know how it ties into the Conjuring, but I do know it's part of the Conjuring universe. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, which we reviewed on this show, didn't really tie into the larger universe outside of Ed and Lorraine Warren being involved. Like it wasn't. Right. They're the characters and they're the lead characters, but it wasn't like teased in what happened in part 2. It wasn't Empire Strikes Back into Return of the Jedi or anything, but so here's my problem with The Nun 2 is that nothing that happens in this movie services any larger story. And the reason why it matters, because as I said, the Curse of La Llorona, which is also directed by Michael Chaves, I don't know how that ties in. I honestly I've never seen it. I have no idea, but I do know it's tied in because I was at a junket with James Wan and Michael Chaves talking about that film. I had no clue at the time what they were talking about, but they were very emphatically talking about how it tied into the Conjuring universe. So somebody can tell us. I'm not like trying to play dumb here. I just have no idea. But I know that one is fairly disconnected, right? The Annabelle films, well, Annabelle is in The Conjuring. Like we see, that's part of the mythology right from day one of The Conjuring. Okay, so we know how that. So, and I know the Annabelle films are largely prequels leading into like where they ended up with Annabelle ends up in the Warrens' possession. Okay, cool. Like that all makes sense. You're leading it to that. I've heard that a couple of the Annabelle films, or at least one of the Annabelle films, is really good. Again, I haven't seen them all. But here's the thing: The Nun, much like the Annabelle films, are prequels. They are leading to the larger story because we do know when Valak shows up in The Conjuring 2, which is my favorite film in the Conjuring universe, and I'll go as far as to say I really, really like The Conjuring 2. I actually legitimately enjoyed that movie. Like it wasn't like it wasn't like when I got done, I'd be like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. I was like, when it was there, I was like, damn, like that was a good movie. We haven't reviewed it on the show. We'll do it eventually. I really like The Conjuring.
You sure we didn't do it on the show?
No, we did Conjuring and Conjuring 3. We haven't done The Conjuring.
Okay.
2. Yeah.
Because I remember us definitely talking about The Conjuring too, because I've also seen it, and I was like, this movie kicks ass.
Yeah, because we did The Conjuring, and I was like, oh, let me watch The Conjuring 2, and I was like, this was better than The Conjuring. Like, and I like The Conjuring. To be clear, the first Conjuring was pretty solid. I really like The Conjuring 2, and that's where Valak shows up for the first time. So we know where Valak goes, right? We know where this ends up in The Conjuring 2, which I think takes place in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that.
We know where it goes, right? So we know where it ends up. So we know Valak survives. We know Valak's going to appear again, like all these kind of things. How do we get there? The problem with The Nun 2, while The Nun did give us that ending with the tie to The Conjuring, which again, even though the actor changing kind of bugged me, I was like, oh, that's a cool twist. The Nun 2 services no story. There's no tie, really. I mean, the nun, yes, the nun is in the movie. It's called The Freaking Nun. Of course, the nun's in the movie. But it didn't service some larger story. It didn't give me, like, if the Nun 2 didn't exist, Patrick, it wouldn't matter to me, is what I'm saying. Because nothing that happens in this film plays a part in anything that happens before or after it. And that's kind of the point of a prequel, right? A prequel. Let me give you a good example of a great prequel, Patrick. And I think you like this film. And it's not horror. Star Wars Rogue One.
Love it.
To me, the best Star Wars film that's been made since Return of the Jedi.
Fair assessment.
I think
yeah, it's up there.
It's up there. I love it. The way that story tied into Star Wars A New Hope was brilliant. Utterly brilliant. Now, I'm not saying that the story in the Conjuring universe has to be as
yeah, that may be the greatest layup of all time, Damon. The greatest assist of all time might be Rogue One. That's a high bar.
But imagine if they called Rogue One a prequel and it didn't somehow lead into A New Hope. We'd be like, what was the point of that? Like, why did you just make this movie that had no point into the new? That's what I'm getting at. That's the point of a prequel. A prequel is supposed to be a story that fills in more story to get you to where you're going. Like, that is the point of a prequel. When you did the Star Wars prequels, when they did Phantom Menace, Clone Wars, and Revenge of the Sith, that was to get us to the new trilogy. If you're not doing that, don't call it a prequel and don't tie it in. Like, what they could have, this film, like, they did it as The Nun because people like the Nun character. You and I have both praised Bonnie Aarons is incredible.
All hail Bonnie.
And The Nun is legitimately terrifying. The visuals of The Nun is so, I mean, it is freakishly scary.
So good.
Like, I'd put it on par with any great horror villain. The Nun is that
100%. Love you, Bonnie.
Yeah. The problem is that the story in The Nun and now going into The Nun 2 doesn't service anything going into The Conjuring 2, The Conjuring 3, Annabelle, none of that. And so you could have just as easily done these films and called them The Priest, and it could have been a demonic priest that has nothing to do with the rest of the Conjuring universe. It's just maybe one character pops up and so it ties together somehow. That's my problem. We know Valak shows up in The Conjuring 2. Nothing that happened in the second film in particular plays any part in what I need to know for those future films.
Well, Damon, since it's very difficult to talk about the movie and we can just kind of get into this stuff, let's just get into the minutia of all this. And I'm going to play Valak's advocate, if you will. What you're positing is it makes sense if we're talking about Star Wars, and it makes sense if we're talking about the Marvel extended universe. It should connect. I would counter that there's no intention to connect the universe of the Conjuring universe other than to say, here are the stories of the demons that exist in this universe. I do believe in some room somewhere when they decided to start breaking out with Annabelles and nuns, James Wan and company just said it doesn't need to perfectly connect. What it needs to do is just talk about these fascinating demons that we only get a blip of in The Conjuring. We only get a taste of them in The Conjuring. Let's give you more of a taste of them here. And fuck it if they don't tie in. I guarantee you some iteration of that conversation went down. And the studio executives go, will that make us a lot of money? Run the numbers. Jim, what does it say? Well, Bill, the numbers say it'll do gangbusters. That's how they talk at WB, because they're old fucks. They're a bunch of old farts. And they went, sign the check. Go do it. We don't give a shit. It's going to make us a lot of money. So while I hear what you're saying with the Star Wars analogy, in Star Wars, there is a clear storyline that we are following. We are leading from this thing to that thing. By the way, you could absolutely just spread out into that galaxy and do stuff that has nothing to do with Luke, Leia, and Han and Vader and all that. You could. It's a galaxy. It's a universe, right? Oh, there's the word. And I guarantee you, the Conjuring universe, they're like, if we tease a demon in a movie, it can just become its own movie. We can loosely tie it into the Warrens, and boy, do they loosely tie it in. Like, it better not be a windy day because the nun will go flying. They loosely tie it in, but I don't think that's the point. And so, and you and I, truth be told, you and I are actually kind of different. Like, I think we agree on almost everything, but our way in, our pre-framing is kind of different. I think you're more of a traditionalist. I think you've said it on the podcast, you take it more from the fan perspective where you're like, I'm paying my money and I expect this all to make sense. I expect it all to connect. If it's a Conjuring universe, I want it to connect that way. And I sat there and went, okay, it's not connected to the Conjuring universe, but that's really not what bugged me about it. And I can't get into what bugs me about it because we're that's spoiler territory.
And to be clear, that's not the only thing to bug me about this film. I'm just saying, like, in terms of the story itself.
Don't do that to me while I'm drinking water.
The story itself, the problem is if the story itself isn't going to tie into the larger universe, then let's just make it a standalone story that just happens also involved a nun. Okay, I actually agree with you. I'm going off on a tangent because they're calling this a prequel that doesn't. It's not a prequel. It's just not. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah, they're using a buzzword to get you to go.
So
that's what they're doing.
Okay, but you're right. Okay, so let's just eliminate that. Let's just say it's just a standalone movie about the nun. Okay, cool. You still don't give me a good story about the nun.
Now that's spoiler territory. Should we get into spoilers now so we can start talking about it?
Okay, listen, folks. You listen to this podcast. We try to avoid spoilers as long as we can, especially with new films, because we understand not everyone's going to go out on the first day a film comes out, and that's part of the reason why we actually delay our shows coming out until like the following Tuesday to give people opening weekend. We know a lot of horror fanatics like ourselves are going to be their opening weekend, but we like to give a couple days before we put out a full podcast. But we do try to avoid spoilers, but unfortunately with a movie like this, it's hard to get away from it, especially when we talk about the issues that we have with this film. So we're getting into spoilers a little early this week, and I apologize. I know we generally tried to dig a little deeper into a film, but this is just really hard because what's okay, I'm going to say this because it's kind of hilarious, Patrick. So I was doing our intro today, and I went to, as a media member, I have access to the Warner Brothers press room. Mm-hmm. So I went to the press room to download photos, things to make for the podcast, and they have a production sheet. Production sheet has, you know what a production sheet is. It has all the actors, directors, cinematographers, everything. But it also, one of the key parts at the beginning is when production begins, they put out a production sheet that says, film directed by Michael Chaves, produced by James Wan, blah, blah, blah. And then they put a synopsis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did a synopsis for, I think it was Eli Roth's new film, Thanksgiving, that's coming out in November, which we are absolutely going to review.
100%.
And it was like 3 or 4 lines. It wasn't crazy, but it was like 3 or 4 lines. And I did another one the other day. What movie did I do the other day? It wasn't, I don't know if it was horror, but it didn't. Oh, it was the new Boys series, Gen V, the Boys prequel, which The Boys is my favorite show on television, probably. Not horror, but it's amazing. I was doing a thing about there, and their synopsis was lengthy synopsis. Really gave you like some real, like something to bite into. The synopsis for The Nun 2, Patrick.
I'm laughing because I look too.
It's barely one line. Barely one line. So when I was writing the intro, like I was like, that's, if you notice, like I kind of dance around because they don't tell you what this film is about. Now, when we talk about spoilers, obviously we're going to talk about what happens in the film. But still, like a trailer, which I know you don't even like seeing trailers. I love trailers. You don't.
Yeah.
I love trailers. Trailers in the synopsis at least gives you an idea. Even if it doesn't give you it's certainly not going to give away spoilers, and it's certainly not going to give you the bigger, broader strokes. But it's going to give you an idea of what you're walking into, right? Like that's normal that's the job of a synopsis in a movie. This film had one line, and barely one line. It was like a priest dies, or priest is murdered.
Yeah.
Sister Irene is sent to France.
Oh, I mean, it's a priest is murdered, an evil is spreading. The sequel to the worldwide smash hit follows Sister Irene as she once again comes face to face with Valak, the demon nun. That's it. And that's what the trailer shows you, by the way, minus the priest is murdered. The spoiler alert, but it's in the copy that you can find anywhere.
That's what so we are getting into spoilers now for that reason, because it gave you nothing. Like it gives you now.
No, but all right, before we get into spoilers, I know what you're going to say. Hold that thought. I know where you're going. Hold that thought. Before I say that, I will reiterate again, it's a gorgeous looking movie, looks good, high quality movie. You do get some scenes with the nun that are the kind of scenes you're kind of looking for, kind of. And it's shot, Damon, not by just any old cinematographer, but by Tristan Nyby. And if that name doesn't immediately jump out of your head, don't worry, because the movie that Tristan shot will, The Dark and the Wicked. So for all you Dark and the Wicked faithfuls out there, you have to go support Tristan. Tristan did a bang-up job. This movie looks great. It looks really good. Yeah, and that's all I'm going to say. Go out there. For all of you who are pausing for spoilers.
Come outside.
Come outside. Boy, I'm just going to watch that movie to go cleanse.
The Dark and the Wicked.
The Dark and the Wicked. So good.
So good. All right, so let's get into spoilers, folks. We are full spoiler territory now. And all right, go ahead and say your line again about the nun, because I want to be able to react to what I was actually going to say when you say, you can see the nun, kinda.
You get the nun, kinda.
Okay. So one of our biggest complaints about the nun, the original nun, was that there wasn't enough of the nun. And one of our other biggest complaints about the nun was that there was no mythology about the nun. We already knew the nun was Valak. We've known that since The Conjuring 2. Yep. We were excited to kind of learn more about Valak and why Valak is here and what is the purpose of this demon, and a little mythology, a little tie back to what, and the nun gave us none of that. And we were like, it didn't ruin the movie, but it kind of like, I don't know. It just really like bogged the movie down because it didn't give us anything. But we were like, okay, we were at the end, listen to our End of the Nun episode from last week. We're like, all right, we're kind of excited about the Nun 2 because we're feeling pretty confident that they're gonna correct the mistakes of the Nun 1, and they're gonna give us what we wanted. Yeah. Patrick, They didn't give us what we wanted at all.
They might have given us less. And here, I keep going back, and here's credit to the original Nun. I can't get that scene out of my fucking head. When the nun finally breaks through and is in that corridor in the original Nun, and the fucking world starts turning on its axis. I fucking loved that. Because, Damon, since The Conjuring 2, I've been like, whatever the fuck Valak is, fucking scary. Whatever Valak is, holy shit. There's a visceral reaction to the creation of that character that Bonnie Aarons 100% embodies and makes just dynamite on screen. So when I saw that in The Nun, and I was like, fuck yeah, here comes the Nun. Like, boy, when the Nun shows up, it's bad news. Like, it just, everything's crumbling down because Valak, who takes the form of this nun, isn't indeed one of these high demons from hell. And just think about it. If I just told you, hey, I want to do this movie about a high demon from hell that looks like the scariest nun you've ever seen in your life, people go, fuck yeah, let's do it. And then you proceed to make a movie that only gives you bits and pieces, and sometimes the nun's in the shadows, and a lot of that stuff works. I've got a lot of scares on my list that I jotted down that are clearly designed to scare the audience. So you get the nun and those little bits. But Damon, somehow, help me here. Because somehow there's less nun in Nun 2.
Way less, it feels like.
It feels like there's even less nun.
You know what here's, and also, by the way, and I literally watched this movie like 2 hours ago, so maybe I'm just forgetting. Did they ever once in this entire movie mention the name Valak? Because I don't.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they do.
Do they?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes. There's actually, and it's funny. I was just peeking at one of those notes. The archivist believes Valak is a rejected angel.
Okay, they do say Valak. Okay, I was like, at the end of the movie, it's like, did they say Valak? Because I know they said nun,
yes.
They said demon, they said a lot of words around it, but I was like, did they actually say it? Because the whole point, we talked about this in the last movie, which was part of another issue we had, which is part of mythology of all demons is when you say their name, it weakens them. That's supposed to be like, that's a age-old thing. It's like, wooden stakes kill vampires.
Right.
And that didn't happen in the Nun. It kind of did a little bit, but then like they never used it again. And
I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but in The Conjuring 2, isn't that how they get Valak by saying Valak's name?
Yeah, that's when they discover what Valak is. They say
Valak. I'm not crazy thinking that. Somebody out there yell at us, but I swear that's how they got Valak, by saying Valak's name.
Yeah, that when they figured out what Valak was and who Valak was, that's how they used it. They used the name Valak.
Yeah. Now, I can give them a benefit of the doubt and say, okay, well, that's in the 1970s. This takes place in the 1950s. Maybe they didn't have that knowledge then, but that doesn't feel right.
But again, I'm not going to beat him over the head for that part. Again, I walked out of the movie actually thinking, like, did they say the word Valak? Because it was so infrequent. But the reason why it was so infrequent is because the nun is not in. Maurice is in this movie. This movie should have been called Maurice 2.
Maurice 2, maybe some nun.
Because this is kind of like, I know, I find a way to rail on this movie every chance I get. When we talk about Halloween Ends, we joked about it being called Corey Ends because it turns into Corey's movie. And I liked Maurice as a character. It's not that I don't like Maurice as a character, and the actor who plays Maurice is great. It's not that. It's just this becomes Maurice's movie. The Nun is in it less than the original Nun. And Maurice kind of takes center stage, possessed by the nun. Okay, sure. But you had the scary visceral feeling that you get is when you see the nun, when you see Valak. Valak is in this movie less than the Nun 1, and most of the bigger scares are set up for Maurice because Maurice is possessed. That's what I walked out of the theater. It's like, did they say the word Valak? And why didn't they just call this movie The Nun 2, The Search for More Maurice or whatever the fuck? Like they should like Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. Like they could have just called The Nun 2, The Search for More Maurice. Because that's what it was. It was Maurice's movie.
Yeah, and I would say that we all know how the original nun ends, which is Valak gets away by getting into Maurice. So nowhere in the trailer do they even mention Maurice or show Maurice, and I'm glad they didn't. That actually wouldn't work for me. But what they do is they introduce you a few years later, and indeed Maurice is still out there, still alive and kicking. He seems to be doing well. He's the same jovial, pretty horny Maurice that you come to know and love. But he seems normal for the most part, except that he's not. And he's a groundskeeper. They start with a cold open that has no signs of anybody, and it's just a priest and a savvy altar boy, and the priest burns. It's a pretty cool scene. And then they cut to the regular story, which is, oh, here's Maurice. He's still alive. He's still in Europe. He's in a different place now. He's doing different things. And something's still not quite right about him. Okay, you're just catching us up to speed because we remember from the nun that he indeed walks around with Valak in him still. So how's that going to play out? And then we cut to the convent where we once again, because she's all over the trailers, meet Sister Irene. And I was shocked to learn, but not shocked because it was the wrong thing to do, but I was shocked to learn that what they decided to do in the movie was put her back in obscurity. She's in a convent. People talk about the things that happened at that abbey, but they don't know that one of their sisters, Irene, was indeed someone who vanquished, at least temporarily, vanquished Valak. They know the legend, but they don't know the hero. And the hero's right there in the room with them. Which I thought it actually made a lot of sense. And they go on to mention that Father Burke, who, by the way, they kill off quicker than Henry Cavill in The Flash. They're just like, oh yeah, he became an archbishop and he died. Like that's how they get rid of him in this movie.
I can't help but wonder, like, seriously, like, did they reach out to Damian Bashir and he's just like, nah, I'm good, and they're like, all right, we're just gonna kill him off with cholera in the first scene, because that's literally, they're like, where's Father Burke? Is like, and literally they bring in a priest to talk to Sister Irene, and like, we have this suspicion that something's going on and Valak is back. And she's like, that's not possible. And he's like, well, you're the only surviving person who's dealt with the demons, so we want you to investigate. And she's like, what about Father Burke? And like, oh, he's dead. And that's literally the end of it. Like, they're just like, oh, yeah, he's dead. I'm like, did Damian Bashir, like, did they reach out to him? Like, dude, you want to come to this movie? He's like, nah, I'm good. And they're just like, all right, we'll just kill him off. Because I was like, because here, like, again, I'm not trying to rewrite the movie. Like, it would have been cool if, like, the opening scene was Valak killing Father Burke.
Right. If that burn the priest moment was Father Burke, that would have been crazy.
That would have been awesome, right? Like,
and it would have been a great catalyst.
Right. But yeah, they're like, Damian Bashir, you want to come back? And he's just like, I'll pass. And so they're like, okay, one scene, one line. Okay, he's dead. And literally that's it. We never hear of Father Burke again.
Yeah. And so, they in secret, the Vatican brings Irene out and goes, we need you to get back out there. Ghostbusters, like, go get it. And she brings along with her one of her sisters, which her other sister is played by Storm Reed, Sister Deborah.
She doesn't bring her.
Yeah,
Sister Deborah just comes along. Like,
yeah, that's true. So, and for one reason, like, it makes zero sense, by the way, that Sister Deborah goes with her, because Sister Deborah can even give a shit about, like, religion, which I get it, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to put her alongside someone with no faith. And they go, oh, okay, well, that'll be an extra challenge for her, except that never really pans out like that. So she just comes along to be kind of the great opposite to Irene. I like Storm Reed, and I like what she does. And she does the Storm Reed thing in this movie, and that's fine. And then there's one big great, like, well, no, sorry, there's not a reunion. There's an investigation, which is they learn that there's been these deaths at these churches and they're moving westward in through Europe. And Irene knows immediately it's Maurice. Well, it's got to be.
She finds out because the one place is like the priest who got burned alive. When they go to France to find him, they said, was anyone else in the church at the time? And they said, just the altar boy and the maintenance man. And like, oh, who's the maintenance man? A guy, they called him Frenchie. And,
Yeah.
and that's, they literally just tell you that because they're like,
Which they didn't
like,
need to. She could have figured that out. But you're right. They do it so ham-fistedly. And you're like,
They're
she
like,
would be smart enough to know this.
was there anyone else in the church? And they're like, yes, of course. There was the maintenance man that we didn't see at all in that opening scene, except for like the shadow of him. And yeah, his name was Frenchie. Oh shit. They really like hammered that one home. And so she's basically like half the movie is Sister Irene searching for Maurice because he's been going from from church to church, abbey to abbey, whatever, looking. And okay, so can I get into real quick probably my biggest problem with the plot of this movie?
Get on it.
Beyond the nun not actually being in the nun. Okay, so what we've always wanted, was mythology about Valak. Now, they do go to an archive at one point, and the priest there, who says he's a glorified librarian, which is a kind of funny line, says this is a former angel, a fallen angel that God condemned to become a demon. Okay, that's pretty cool, right? Like a little thing. That's very small nugget they give you.
Just a nugget.
But then they introduced this whole other mythology about Saint Lucy, who got her eyes stabbed out because she wouldn't burn alive when they tried to kill her. And apparently her eyes have become some weird mystical charm called the Eyes of Lucy, or the Eyes of Saint Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
That's some sort of weapon. Now, here's where we get into the really sticky part of this where I really have issues. Apparently, Valak is searching for the Eyes of Lucy. That's the plot of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
The nun is moving from priest to priest and, abbey
church
to
to church and chapel to chapel,
searching for the Eyes of Lucy. Patrick, I have a question for you. You're a smart guy. You're a college graduate.
We've heard this. Yeah, thank you.
Dude, I'm a writer by trade. That's my job. I'm a writer. I have to explain things in my writing. That's part of my job. But I need you to explain something. I trust you as a friend and a co-host to explain this to me. What the fuck was the point of the Eyes of Lucy? Because it's in the movie. It's the MacGuffin of the movie. What the fuck is it? And what the fuck does it do?
They never get into that. They do say that if Valak gets the Eyes of St. Lucy, it will be an incredible power. However, if someone else holds him, it'll be better. I'm like, okay. But what's the point of, if Valak is going place to place, looking for the Eyes of St. Lucy, what's the plan once she gets them? And the problem is they just don't get into it. Like, there was enough room in this movie to add one more line and go, and if Valak holds this ultimate power, she can open the gates of hell and let all 200 fallen angels out and bring about the end of Earth. That didn't take me long to say, Damon. That might have clocked 8 seconds. To just say, if Valak gets the Eyes of St. Lucy, she opens the gates to hell, and the world goes to shit. That's all they had to say, Damon. The rest of this movie. The rest of the movie would have been completely understandable. Because they add another, you know how we're like, man, we'd like some nun. Instead, we get some Maurice. We get something else, too. We just not the nun. So we get 2 new things.
Yeah.
Less nun, and then not explaining what the weapon is so important for.
And then on top of that, let me just throw in one more layer of weirdness. Suddenly, Irene is now also a descendant of Lucy. That's also thrown in at the mythology at the end, where we find out when the nun tries to burn her, she won't burn. She's a descendant of Lucy. But guess what that means? I don't fucking know.
Hey, she is the unburned, Damon, as a Game of Thrones fanatic. She is Sister Irene Targaryen, the unburned. Okay?
The Eyes of, it was the weirdest choice to introduce this trinket, so to speak. Like, okay, let me remember the last time we talked about The Nun. I said that the end of that movie totally ripped off Tell Snooker
Yes.
Demon Knight. It was the
Yes.
exact same ending. Mouthful of Jesus blood, spit in the face of the demon.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm okay with homages, right? I'm okay with that.
That's fine.
A very similar movie to this, with a character named Valak, nonetheless. John Carpenter's Vampires. Have you seen John Carpenter's Vampires?
Not all the way. I've seen it bits and
Okay.
pieces.
The whole point of that movie, it's 30 some odd years old. If you haven't seen it by this point, I'm sorry I'm spoiling it for you. The main character is a vampire named Valak, and he's searching for this relic, the Cross of Bergia, I think is what they call it, the Cross of Bergia, or the Bergia Cross, whatever. And they're like, why is he searching for it? You come to find out, this is mythology working, Patrick. You come to find out that he was a priest back in the whatever, the early aughts, whatever it was. And he led an uprising, and the priests thought he was possessed. They tried to perform an exorcism on him. It failed. And during the cross they used, it failed, and the body was destroyed, but the soul remained living. And you come to find out that the Catholic Church was responsible for creating the first vampire because it was an unfinished exorcism. They destroyed his body, but they didn't destroy the soul. And all he could do was walk at night. He couldn't live during the day, and that he had to feast on blood. It was like the reverse of a human, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's your create. That was a cool twist, right? Like cool
Yeah.
twist. How a vampire was an exorcism gone wrong. Okay. Valak is searching for that cross because he wants to finish the exorcism that will allow him to walk in the daytime. So the whole point of the movie, he's trying to find the same cross that basically condemned him thousands of years ago. He wants to finish the ceremony so it allows him to fully become realized as this condemned soul, but the fully condemned soul can walk both the daytime and night, which would
Right.
make him completely unstoppable because he's already powerful and all the other shit. They gave me a reason why I need that cross. He needs it to finish the exorcism or the ceremony, whatever it was called, so he can become a vampire that can walk in the daylight. That's pretty terrifying, right? And that gives you a reason why he's searching for this cross.
Mm-hmm.
That took me 2 minutes to explain to you.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
How can they not do this with the eyes? It's bad.
I
enough
added
that-
8 seconds to their dialogue.
It's bad enough that they had to add in that suddenly Irene, on top of everything else, she's also a descendant of St. Lucy for some unknown reason. That like
I didn't hate that, but yeah.
They also inject their mother, like suddenly her mother played a part, which was really weird. And like whatever. So okay, she's a descendant of St. Lucy. Fine.
St. Lucy through the mother's bloodline. That's basically
Yeah,
what it is.
Whatever. But the eyes of St. the weapon, the MacGuffin, the soul, the whole point of Valak in this movie is to search out the eyes of St. Lucy. To what end? And that's my problem. They never. It's a powerful tool. Awesome. To do what?
Yeah.
Can you fly? Do you turn invisible? Like, what the fuck does it do?
Just say to open the gates of hell and bring hell to earth. That's it. That's all you have to say. And then I'm in, and then I know what's going on. And Damon, I'm going to jump all the way to the end because Valak eventually holds the relic. Oh shit, here we go. A couple of spikes, some yelling, and then, they get it back from. She's so powerful. Valak is so powerful with this relic. It should be the end of the movie and the end of humankind, I guess. I don't know because they don't say. She gets it. They manage to get it back and kill her. Or kinda, not really though.
She does go full Ant-Man though. She increases in size too when she first
She does get bigger.
She gets bigger, and I'm like, oh boy, that's really the reason for this relic, because she got bigger.
Yeah. I don't know. They introduced some other things too. They introduced the idea that she preys on your fears, which is more of a classical exorcism idea. Like the demon that's here inhabiting you is playing on your fears. And they kind of play with that a little bit. Like some of the schoolgirls, they pull pranks on the headmistress, and then she dies because of Valak. And then they use the mistress to scare those girls and almost trap them and kill them. What's another thing that like there is this other thing, and help me out if you picked up on this or not. There's this devil, this like Black Phillip type, like goat Satan. I think they call it Satan. They say it's Satan.
They say it's the devil. Yeah, they say it's
they say it's the devil that comes out of the stained glass window because of all this, and it's attacking the girls in the school. What?
Yeah.
Like what? Like it's literally just another storyline.
Yeah.
Which was a problem in the first one. We had like I think Father Burke's storyline with his exorcism gone wrong was just sort of in the way, and this was just another reason to sort of like have another thing in the movie. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like in The Conjuring 2 that was Valak creating different beasts in the house? I don't remember.
There were other ghosts, and Slender Man was one of them. Like,
okay, so then that tracks. Then I'll leave that be, because maybe that's what Valak just does. They mention it. They say Valak preys on your fears. Okay, and then so when Valak is gaining power in this girls' school, she is creating different things to scare people. So I was like, okay, however, just fucking get to Valak already.
Yeah.
Like, just like Valak's the cool thing. That's what it kind of confuses me about the filmmaking and the story building for The Nun. Do the creators not know what we're obsessed with is The Nun? Because they try their damnedest to make the movie about things other than the nun, and the nun just gets to hang out in the shadows in the background, scary every now and then. Everybody in my theater, whenever the nun showed up, you could feel the energy rise, and everybody kind of go, whoa, like they want the nun. They're fucking here for the nun because the movie's called The Nun. We're having this conversation again this week. Instead, what we got, and you mentioned, is just now Maurice is like, he gets fully possessed in this movie. So the opportunities I had for more nun were taken by Maurice. And then when the nun gets more power, we get Satan himself as a goat man and the head mistress, and then Ant-Man nun at the end.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Let me back up for just a second. I've said this before on this podcast. Sometimes your expectations are what get in the way of you enjoying something. That may be the case for me. But I'm saying it I'm saying it for a very good reason. The Nun itself, Valak itself, fucking rocks. Valak is dope as shit. Give me more of it. And so I get frustrated watching these really well-crafted movies. Well-crafted, like filmmaking wise. I still bump up against the story, but okay, I digress. Akilah Cooper's rather talented. And by the way, Ian Goldberg and Richard Nang, they didn't just write any old movie. They wrote The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Killer movie.
Incredible movie.
These are three solid writers. These are three really good writers. And for some reason, okay, I don't get it. I'm not a talented writer like they are. They just go, you know what The Nun 2 needs? Other things other than The Nun. I don't understand how they land on that. Is it my expectations, Damon? Am I just wanting something that does not necessarily need to be there?
Here's like, I'm not telling them like how to write a movie, because they're far more talented than I am when it comes to that. We all want the nun. That's what we talked about. If you're not going to give me the mythology of the nun, which is what we've been begging for 2 films, like some reason to understand the motivations of the nun. Okay, the motivations are the nun is evil incarnate, and the Valak wants to spread evil. Okay, let's just leave it at that, and let's leave the very baseline of this demon. Then give me the nun as a slasher film, where the nun is just killing motherfuckers. Where
right.
Like, The opening scene is the nun killing someone. The second scene is the nun killing someone. The third scene is the nun killing someone. And then Sister Irene shows up to try to figure out why these people are dying. 3 or 4 more people die, and then Sister Irene stops her. That is a slasher film. That is every Halloween,
take it.
Nightmare on Elm Street, Jason. All slasher films have that same formula. I'm in for that. Give me the nun just killing a bunch of people in cool ways, scaring the piss out of them, and killing them. 7 or 8 deaths, and then she gets stopped. Okay, cool. Because every time Bonnie Aarons is on screen, I'm fucking cheering.
Yeah,
I
love it.
Love it. Now, I mentioned earlier, Patrick, that I was convinced watching this movie that this was 100% a money grab. Do you want to know the moment when I had that solidified for me?
Damon, I live for your moments.
The end of this movie, how they stop Valak. Okay, so I already had a problem with the nun ending with spitting Jesus Christ's blood
Right.
into the face of Valak.
It's got to be the ultimate relic.
It melts her like the Wicked Witch of the West, yet somehow she still survived in it. I keep saying she because obviously it's Bonnie Aarons. It survives in Maurice. I tried to disconnect myself from that because it doesn't logically work. If the blood of Jesus Christ doesn't stop this thing, nothing ever will, is what I'm getting at. Okay.
Right.
Let's get past that. They want to make a sequel. It somehow survived. There was a piece of it, was a Horcrux or some shit, and it survived in Maurice. Okay, cool. To end the Nun 2, Sister Deborah finds her faith, inexplicably, by the way. She holds hands with St. Lucy's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter, Sister Irene. They're holding hands and they say a prayer, and they bless where they just happen to be in a basement that is filled with wine.
Mm-hmm.
And they turn the wine to blood like you do in communion.
Mm-hmm.
And the wine explodes and gets all over into Valak and kills it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm all for the symbolism.
Yep.
You're a Catholic. I'm not, but I understand it.
I remember how it all worked. Yep.
I understand what communion is, the body and the blood. I get all that.
Mhm.
I do. I understand the symbolism of it. I do. I really do. And I understand the faith part of it, Patrick, even though I'm not a religious person. I understand you when you do communion, you are taking it on the faith that you are ingesting the body and the blood of Christ. I get that.
Yeah.
I do. But it's not actually the body and the blood. And they bless it, okay, again. But the first movie had the actual blood. Now, if you went in reverse, and the first one was the wine, and it wasn't actually, the real blood of Christ, then you graduated to the blood of Christ.
Right.
Okay. If the actual blood bled from Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago can't stop the nun, the water into wine, the wine into blood, that does it?
Yeah, it's like Coca-Cola will blow the doors off of Valak. But you know what's better? Coke Zero. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't work. You had the holiest of holy relics, the actual blood of Jesus Christ. There's not a relic better. There's just not. God's jizz, maybe. Like, I mean, seriously, like Jesus on earth blood, got a little bit of it from that's it. You got the best relic of all time. And the substitute relic kills Valak, who has the all-powerful eyes of St. Lucy that will make it an unstoppable force of evil. So some substitute Jesus blood kills it. Okay. There, and by the way, like, now we're getting into Catholic logic, which is dangerous territory to get into. In Catholicism, and I don't back this at all, but this is how Catholicism works. The only people who can turn wine into the blood of Christ are anointed priests. Nuns can't do it. It's their rules. It's their fucked up, stupid, like misogynist, bullshit, patriarchal rules. That's their rules, not mine. So those nuns can't even do it, even if it's the person of Saint Lucy. I that's how much I know about Catholicism. I'm like, you're not even doing your own thing right. An anointed priest can do it, and only because that's the rules. It's actually considered a mortal sin for a nun to try to do that. Like, and again, like, that's so convoluted. That's Catholic fucking law. It's dumb. Okay, I know it's dumb. Sorry, fellow Catholics or fellow former or current Catholics that listen. But that's the fucking crazy logic of Catholicism, and they don't fuck with it in this movie.
But you see where I'm coming from with the reverse of like what they're using to kill Valak. You have
like less powerful blood.
Yeah.
Let's go with your idea that now it's the blood of Christ. Okay, but it wasn't the actual blood. It's the wine turned to blood. We had the real shit.
And that's why I said I know that this was 100% they're going for the money grab, because you already used the most power. And again, the way they explained that Valak survived the first film and got into Maurice, and we see Maurice pop up in The Conjuring. Okay, again, even though it's a little weird that you use the actual literal blood of Jesus Christ to kill it, it somehow survived. But then to use that exact same trick, the exact same trick in the second one, except you're transforming wine to blood, like communion, and that's what kills it. And we know it doesn't actually kill it because Maurice, and that's the other thing about the ending, Maurice goes off and they're like, oh, thanks for helping out, man. Glad to save you.
See you later, Maurice.
That's it. We know he survives to The Conjuring. We already saw that from the first one.
And Irene's a sharp gal.
Yeah.
She knows what happened the first time around. I mean, there's a possibility that she doesn't. No, there's not, because she determines that Maurice is the one that's carrying Valak with him.
Yeah,
she knows.
Yeah.
She shows up because she knows that Valak is still with him. Even though we could say at the end of the original Nun, when they hugged and said their goodbyes, she didn't know Valak was with him then. Okay. But she knows now. We established that in this movie. She knows now that despite the fact she spat the blood of Christ, the actual blood of Christ, onto Valak's face and melted it down, that it somehow is still with Maurice. And she repeats that and then repeats letting him go. What? She's got more knowledge than she had before. And what she does with that knowledge is repeat the same mistake. No.
And they actually say at one point during the movie that the demon nun Valak, or again, I don't even know if they actually use the word Valak, but the demon nun thing infected is possessing Maurice, using Maurice as like a meat puppet to do its bidding, and then Maurice is just gonna die. Like once Valak's done, like Maurice is done. So they eradicate. So they actually say that, like they're like, there's a point which Irene actually says that she's like, she's just using Maurice as a meat puppet. It's a tool, and once she's done with it, she's gonna cast him aside, and he's gonna be dead. Well, they cast it out, and Maurice's still kicking. So
this could be an issue.
No one thought to maybe like check the back of his fucking neck for an upside down cross. Nothing.
Yeah, like, hey, wait a minute, let me just see your neck real quick.
But it's just this is what I'm talking about with the money grab thing. From the very first moment with the whole introduction, and then Father Burke, and then again with the whole you literally use the same trick from the first film into the second film, except this time it's not actual blood; it's the blood you blessed or the wine you blessed to become blood. And then the same thing happens. Maurice just walks away. Like they do this. Like that's why I say I know that the entire purpose of this film is it was not, again, even though I complained about it, it wasn't meant to tie into the larger Conjuring universe. It wasn't meant to be a better standalone story. It wasn't really meant to carry on the story from the Nun 1. It was just, we got money, and this film did really well at the box office. Let's do another one. Let's introduce this weird Eyes of St. Lucy that means nothing, that has no relevance whatsoever to the rest of the universe, much less do we actually explain what it's for, why it's there, why Valak wants it, besides it gives them great power. Of what? Like explosive diarrhea? Like what does it give you? Something we don't know. It glows. Oh shit. And then at the end, same thing happens. They use the wine turned into blood. It kills Valak, or so we think. And Maurice just walks away. That's it. They don't even have like the preamble to go back to the freaking exorcism at the beginning of The Conjuring to say, "Yep, he still survived." We just
they did
on.
something. They did something worse. They did a mid-credit scene, which you probably saw it, right?
Yes, I did.
They did a mid-credit scene where someone calls the Warrens. So you get to see the Warrens. Oh, cool. And I'm assuming what they're calling them for is like, hey, we got Maurice and he needs a.
Actually, I actually read up on this.
So it's helped me out because I was like, why is this here?
It's Father Gordon, who is their priest at the Catholic Church, who works with them. He calls them, and in the mid-credits or post-credits scene, whatever you want to call it, Ed Warren answers the phone, or his daughter says, you have a phone call, Dad, and it's Father Gordon. He gets on the phone. He's like, the bat phone rings. I answer.
Right.
Commissioner Gordon, you need me? Okay, great. We're on our way, and they hang up. That's not a tie-in to The Conjuring 1. That's actually a cut scene from The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. They filmed that for The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It to lead into The Conjuring 4. They just didn't put it in the film. So they put it in this film instead. So they're basically teasing that there's going to be a fourth Conjuring movie, which is fine, but it has no relevance to this one. Now, could they tie it to this? Could Valak be the main antagonist in the next Conjuring movie? I have to assume maybe that's where they're going. But the post-credit scene was literally something that they filmed for The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and they put it in this film to tie to what is going to become The Conjuring 4.
All right, I'm going to go with you on that. And we're getting way off topic, but I don't give a shit. Because they didn't give a shit. So, all right, that's fine. Let's just say we're going into The Conjuring 5, and fuck yeah, this time it's the Warrens versus Valak. Well, I guess you have to do them doing the exorcism of Maurice.
But they already did that.
But first of all, they already did it. And then there's The Conjuring 2, which, if I'm not mistaken, happens it's before the events of The Conjuring 1. Or it's after the events.
It's after, I think.
Is it? I think it's after the events of the first Conjuring.
I can't
It's hard to remember. Either way, it doesn't matter. Like, what? Like, what? How? What are they doing? Like, I was like, oh, cool. They're like, I knew they were going to lay us up with the Warrens. I knew that was coming in that post-credit scene. I knew there was one. And I said, it's going to have the Warrens in it. So what's it going to be? And then I was like, so what direction are we going in then?
Okay. Again, we talk about with the one line that you mentioned, 8 seconds. It opens a gate to hell. You just gave the Eyes of St. Lucy purpose, right? Because it had no purpose.
Right.
By the way, let me just be clear about this. I'm not a better writer than anybody that wrote on this film. Let me be clear about that. We also understand this is, if it really was, it makes sense. It was just a cut scene from The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. So it wasn't even really meant to tie in to this film. It's just a teaser to say, hey, we're going to do The Conjuring 4. Okay, again, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But they have editing. They can do reshoots. And that literally could have taken no more than like 10 minutes of shooting, like to do a reshoot of that scene. They did it for The Nun when they reshot the scene for The Conjuring because they put the guy who played Maurice
right. They did
in that movie, who wasn't the guy Maurice in the original Conjuring movie. Phone rings. Daughter shows up. Dad, you have a phone call. It's somebody from the church. Oh, hello? Oh. Concerned look. Lorraine comes in. What is it? Yes, we'll be right there. Click. It was Sister Irene. There's a problem. Oh, it tied together. Sister Irene. She called. Holy shit. How cool would that be?
Did you mean to say it's your sister? And then we cut to Lorraine and she goes, Irene?
Whatever.
Because that'd be fucking rad. Be like, yes, okay, it is her sister. Great. Like we figured that out.
Like,
yeah, like
that's the phone call. It's Sister Irene.
Yeah.
There's a problem at the church or whatever. There you go.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
your tie-in.
And you don't even need to
what?
reshoot it. You do the digital mouth. You put in Luke Skywalker's mouth and you just fucking do it.
But like, tell me that would like kind of like again, even though I hated that they reshot the entire ending of The Conjuring to put the scene with Maurice, they used a different actor because the original Conjuring had the same scene with an older actor, and then they replaced it with a Maurice from The Nun. Okay, again, it kind of bugged me, but it was a good tie-in. Wouldn't that have just given you purpose of that post-credit scene if they said, "Oh, a phone call from the church. Oh, it's Sister Irene." Holy shit, how cool would that be? Like, oh, we just tied them together. Nothing else about this film. And you know what, all my entire thing about like how this doesn't tie together, and you said like it doesn't really matter, and I say yes, I agree. Largely, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right about that. Okay, fine. But at least serve me that purpose. If they do that scene and she answers the phone or he answers the phone and they say, "Sister Irene, we'll be right there," or whatever the fuck.
Right.
How cool would that be?
I mean, it wasn't. It's not hard to do.
But do you see how that totally changes the trajectory of the fourth film?
Yeah, and maybe they didn't want to like do a hard tie-in, like, but that's behind the scenes stuff where you just go, I don't know if it's going to be Ed and Lorraine in the final movie.
But who knows if like they don't even have to bring her back? They could just say like they could do the Father Burke thing. They show up,
right? Yeah, I mean,
like,
there could be a million reasons why they don't cement it because you go,
also,
I don't know if we're doing another one.
And also, Sister Irene is a nun and she's an investigator. She could have gone on to invest a million different cases. Like it doesn't.
By the way, she could easily just take over the franchise. Okay, once we catch up to whatever point in the Conjuring we're at, and the Warrens are finally done. Well, the Sister Irene's fully capable. She's the fucking descendant of Saint Lucy. Like, she's fully capable to take over the family business.
The phone call comes in. All you had to do to give everyone in that theater a moment of like, oh shit, this is cool. It's Sister Irene. Oh, how cool would that have been?
I would have liked it.
That would have paid off the entire. I don't care if it pays off in the nun showing up again. I don't really care if even they try to old up Thaisa Farmiga and make her show up in bad makeup to show like she's an old woman now, because these films take place in the 50s and the Conjuring films take place in the 70s. I think the last one was in 1980 or 81 when The Devil Made Me Do It. So she would be like, at that point, she'd be like in her 50s or 60s or whatever, 70s, whatever.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't need them to old up Thaisa Farmiga and put her in bad makeup and make her look like she's 70 years old. But the phone call, that phone call would be amazing. It ties it together, and you're like, holy shit, it really is the same universe. Yeah. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted in this world, Patrick, and they couldn't give it to me. They didn't give me a lot of things in this movie, but at least they could have given me that.
Well, they said no. Sorry, Damon.
They said no. Here's the eyes of St. Lucy for your troubles.
Cool. What do I do with them? We don't know. We're not gonna tell you.
Yeah. What do? We don't know, and neither do you. Fuck off.
They're just powerful. Okay. Fuck off.
Yeah, they're powerful. Fuck off. All right, let's get into categories. We've gone so far off topic here, but let's get into categories because boy, oh boy, this film, we had a lot to say about a film that we clearly didn't enjoy that much. Let's kick things off as we do each and every week here on the show, way deep into this program, and talk about best performance. Patrick, there were highlights to this movie. The performances were one of them. Yeah. Who was your best performance?
Well, believe it or not, despite what we've been saying all night, I did give my best performance to Jonas Bloquet, who plays Maurice. Why? Well, it's the whole fucking movie's about him. Yeah. He's got a lot to do in this movie. He was sort of comic relief in the original Nun. He was just sort of there for fun and there to like help out in the end. In this movie, he's possessed. He's got his eyes on an Irish teacher. He's still horny and all that stuff, but he's got a little more purpose now. And he's carrying around Valak, who is chasing him all around Europe to find this relic for some reason that we're not going to tell you. And so he's got a lot to do. He gets possessed, like he gets into moments where he's possessed. And so, like, I think in those moments he kind of freezes up and then Valak runs out and does what Valak does and then runs back in him, I think.
She jumps out of the Iron Man suit and comes back and jumps back in the suit.
Yeah. I'm kind of confused at the mechanics of it, but whatever. And so Maurice had a lot to do in this movie, and for that, I decided to give him the award this time.
Yeah, he's good, and I like him as a character. Jonas Bloquet is a good actor. All that, I'm all for it. As I said, The Nun 2, Maurice, the second coming of Maurice. That's what this movie is.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. My best performance, this is where I want to go back to where I talk about the children who can make or break a movie. I really liked, again, all the performances in this movie are really good. Thaisa Farmiga is strong. I love Storm Reed. She's always great. I had never seen Anna Popplewell, who plays Kate, the teacher, who's kind of got like a little crush going on with Maurice, and her daughter is Sophie, who's a student there. But I actually gave my best performance to Caitlin Rose Downey, who played Sophie. Sophie is the girl who's kind of bullied. She's the teacher's daughter at this boarding school. She gets bullied by the other children. She's very kind of mouseish and very quiet, but she has like this fun friendship with Maurice. She makes him a friendship bracelet, and he kind of looks out for her, and she's just very sweet. And then at the end, she of course gets terrified because Maurice is actually possessed. I thought she killed it. I thought she did an incredible job the entire way through, because she does play such a big part, going from that kind of mousy, timid girl to where she has to become a bit of the scream queen later in the movie, and then also plays a little bit of the heroine later in the movie. I thought she did a tremendous job, and I have no idea how old Caitlin Rose Downey is. I know she's an Irish actor. She's originally from Ireland, but I don't know if she's like 13, 14 years old, but I thought she did a tremendous job.
She did do a good job. And she does the thing that all writing suspension of disbelief and all that has to do, is she has to go through something so fucking traumatic and in the end be totally okay.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like her best friend and her protector, Maurice, turns into a fucking demon who births a giant Valak and all these other demons and all that stuff. And in the end, she hugs him and thanks him for all his time. That's not how kids work. But I digress, because that's just, we have to do that in movies because the reality is way sadder.
That's the script, not the performance.
Not the performance. But it doesn't matter. Any movie would have to do it, because the reality was the kid would be catatonic, and they can't even do that in movies. It wouldn't be fun. We wouldn't like it.
What happened to Sophie? Oh, she's in the hospital. She's really
she's screaming in a padded room. You know what I mean? Like you don't want what would actually happen. So I'm not really complaining about that.
They have to pump her full of 30 cc's of Thorazine every day to get her to calm the fuck down. So.
Yeah, but you're right. She was good in the role that she was given.
Yeah, she was really good. Let's talk about favorite character. Patrick, I have a feeling I know your favorite character is, even though I'm gonna pull executive decision right now. I'm gonna disqualify your pick, Patrick.
You can't do that. That's my pick.
You know why? Because your pick wasn't barely in the movie.
No, my pick was in the movie, just not enough. My favorite character is the Nun. I'm doubling down on that shit. I fucking love the Nun. I do. That's why I was excited to see The Nun 2, even though I didn't really like The Nun 1. I still got a great movie, like well-made movie. And I got these bits and pieces of The Nun, and I was like, oh, but The Nun's coming, right? The Nun's coming. And The Nun never really came until just literally like the end. Literally like the final showdown that's maybe 10 minutes. That's giving him some.
Yeah.
But I love The Nun. The Nun is my favorite character. I'm letting someone at Warner Brothers know, hey, James Wan and company, I really like The Nun. My favorite character in the movie. Just start putting her in the movies, please.
Yeah, you're right. That is the best character. It's the character I wanted more of, and yet they gave me less in the sequel than they did the first one.
Yeah.
Which seems bizarre to think about that. Like, usually sequels sometimes go a little bit over the top and they give you more than what you need. This one goes in the opposite direction. They give you less. And like I said, if you just turn this into a slasher film and just have the Nun kill a bunch of people, like one scene she kills it, one scene, you know what I mean? Like, yes, it's a formulaic way of making a horror movie, but it gives me what I want. And what I want is the Nun.
Mm-hmm.
The Nun is terrifying. Legitimately nightmare fuel. And I can't see it in this movie. It's so frustrating. My favorite character is also the nun, but I will give credit, and here's why I give credit where credit's due. This also ties back to performance as well. I want to give credit where credit's due, even though I'm vastly disappointed and upset that there's not more nun. I will give credit where credit's due with character wise in terms of playing a tormented character. One of the biggest problems I had with Halloween Ends, amongst a
Oh,
multitude,
you have a problem with Halloween Ends?
right?
I didn't.
You're
I didn't know
shocked
that.
about that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Corey, the character that I despise, who became the central focus of the film, was largely just an unlikable, unenjoyable character on top of everything else. Like, it was like, it's a Michael Myers and Laurie Strode movie without Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. It was a Corey movie. I didn't like Corey.
Right.
Corey wasn't good. He wasn't a good character.
Right.
So even though you're giving more and more of this guy, you're giving more and more of somebody I don't care about, much less like. Maurice is good.
Mhm.
Maurice is a good character in this film.
Yeah.
The story arc with Maurice is pretty cool. He's possessed. He actually befriends this little girl. He's kind of her protector. He's flirting with her mom. There's kind of like a little bit of a relationship building there when he's not being tormented by Valak. Maurice is great. Actually, Maurice's story arc is the best part of this movie because he's possessed and he doesn't know it. And it comes out, and he realizes when Sister Irene shows up that he's the one who is possessed. He doesn't know it until then, because it just happens. His story arc is great. Like, it's just the problem is that he's possessed by the nun. We want the nun. You know,
Just want the nun.
That's like going back to a Marvel reference. That's like giving us an entire movie of Bruce Banner, yet we never see the Hulk. Now, I like Bruce Banner. We all like Bruce Banner.
Sure.
And I like Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo.
I like Ed Norton, who did it in the other movie. But it's called The Incredible Hulk. If you never see The Incredible Hulk and you just get Mark Ruffalo for 3 hours, you'd walk out of the theater and you'd probably be a little disappointed, wouldn't you?
I mean, a little bit. I was going to see the Hulk.
This is the nun without the nun, or at least not very much of the nun.
Yeah. Yeah. Just want the nun. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah. So, but Maurice was good. I like the character.
Yeah, no, he was good. He was a good character.
So.
A lot of good characters in this movie. Just not a lot of none.
Yeah, not a story beyond that.
No.
What about best scare, Patrick? What was your best scare in The Nun?
Well,
The Nun 2.
In The Nun 2. In The Nun also, and maybe a little bit of The Nun is what we should call that. Valak has another cool hallway scene. And this one actually got me. It was like, Valak is like manifesting more and more. And at one point, someone, I can't remember who it was opening up a hallway door. And at the end of that hallway door was the nun, and everybody in the theater, oh shit. And we're all kind of sitting there. It's taking just a little too long, which is the perfect way to kind of draw out some dread, is go, come on, when's it going to happen? And then all of a sudden you expect the nun to kind of lunge at them. And instead it's like she turns into crows and they kind of just like flutter into the screen. It was a great jump scare. It really worked. It worked on me. It worked on everybody in the theater. It really worked. And I liked it. And it was a very nun heavy scene. So yeah, that was going to get my vote.
Yeah, that was a good one. So there was one scene in this movie, and I just watched the movie a couple hours ago. There's one scene in this movie that legitimately made me jump, and my girlfriend turned over and kind of laughed because I never do it. I rarely jump. Again, we always say we have to grade on a scale because you and I are completely fucked up, and so we're harder to scare than the average moviegoer, right? So we usually judge. You judge by your wife and my girlfriend when they jump because they're normal people. They're not maladjusted, twisted fucks like us. So a scene that, and I know I say this all the time, Patrick, a scene that I see coming that still works are my favorite scares.
Yeah.
When I know it's happening, I can predict it's coming, yet you still get me. I love those. And the one that got me in this movie was the scene at the book stand, which we see in the trailer. When all the magazines flip open and it all turns into like an image of the nun, like a twisted, distorted image of the nun. They did a great bit of misdirection because Sister Irene turns around. We turn away from the camera. I'm like, here comes the nun. She's going to turn around. The nun's going to be there. She turns around. The nun's not there. It's still the pictures. And I'm like, the fuck? And then a second later, the nun does pop out and grabs her by the neck. It was such a it was one of my biggest complaints. Was it about the nun or another one we watched recently where they did so many close-ups?
Yeah, well, it was the nun. Yeah.
They do so many close-ups that when they pan out, the scare is coming because it's just so obvious that you're like literally like zoomed in on their forehead. So when they zoom out, you know something's gonna be to the left, the right, or the back of them. Like it's just too obvious. Like you've kind of ruined it for me. This one, I knew it was coming. The nun is there. It's the image of the nun. When she turns around and looks the other way, I'm like, oh my God, here we go. Like, this is so predictable. She's going to turn left, and oh shit, the nun's to the right. When she turns back, the nun's not there. She turns again, and then the nun, it's just a good bit of misdirection. And when the nun actually does pop out and grab her by the throat, I jolted. I was like, oh shit. So,
what they do. Yeah, it's a great scene. It's a really good scene. And I was like, oh, this is the trailer scene. So how's this one going to get me? Well, what it does differently is there's a light gag.
Yeah.
It's a light is kind of flickering in and out. So when she turns around and you look down the alleyway and you don't see anything and you come back and it's still just the picture and you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. And it's like dee like the light like kind of fades, but it fades and it comes back to normal. So there's like a half-second fake out and then it cuts again. And as the second it cuts in, it just great timing, like a really, really good timing. So it was a good scare. It was worth noting.
That was the one that I was like, I literally jumped in my seat. And my girlfriend's like, they got you. I was like, they did get me. That was a good one. She's like, that never happens. I was like, I know, that one got me. I literally jolted in my seat. I was like, good job. That was a good one.
You know why? Because when the nun's on screen, she can fuck shit up.
We all win. We all win. We all win.
Call me crazy.
Let's talk about best kill. There aren't a lot of kills in this movie.
Yeah.
But there are some. So what was your best kill in The Nun?
This movie's light on kills. It's also like gore is almost non-existent, so it's not even a category this week. But I really loved the opening kill. And that I called it Burn the Priest, which Burn the Priest is the original name of Lamb of God, which is a metal band from Virginia that I really like. But basically they burn the priest, which is cool. And I don't like all I can just say is the imagery is awesome. Like these are well-made movies. And so the imagery of that priest being like lifted up into the air in the cathedral and like being set on fire just looks fucking rad. And you're just like, damn, that looks cool.
Yeah, it was full on Hereditary. Like they just set him on fire, and like it was really cool. It was a good opening, very similar, reminiscent to the Nun 1 with the nun hanging herself, which ended up being kind of like the coolest gore and everything in that movie as well. Which, by the way, I want to mention, I saw an interview with Michael Chaves. He was talking about this movie, and they asked him about like doing the sequel, and he said that the original cut with test audiences, the audience was like, it wasn't gory. And so he's like, oh, I can add more gore. So he went back and I was like, what gore did you really add? There's like a little bit of blood in this movie. I was like, when did you really add gore in this movie? Because there really isn't any gore. There's not a lot of deaths in this movie. So I guess I'll just go with the other kind of obvious one, which is the mother, the lead woman of the
headmistress or whatever.
Headmistress or whatever you want to call her of the boarding school. She goes in, her son had died in this church, the chapel that had been closed, which is where the relic, the Eyes of St. Lucy, was actually hidden. And that's her son had died in there during the war, like something fell and killed him. And so she gets home.
Yeah, it was like during the bombings or whatever.
Yeah, and then something fell and killed him. And so she goes in there, she thinks she sees like a ghost version of him. And then like a giant hook from up on top falls on her and kills her. And when she falls over dead, you see blood splat everywhere. So that was kind of cool. A little different, although again, why not just have her get killed by the nun? Why not have the nun come out and rip her throat out? I'm just saying.
The other kill was, I think, Maurice, right? Maurice actually physically killed somebody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like there was like a delivery person that came in and saw him being possessed.
Grabs him by the throat and,
Yeah, and snaps the throat. And I was like, that's like Maurice did it. But I mean, Maurice was possessed. He didn't know he did it. Valak was using him as the
even
vessel.
That was kind of off screen. Like it wasn't really.
It was. You just hear the neck snap because it's a kid. I think they don't want to like go all in, so they cut to the legs and you hear a big neck snap, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, Maurice just killed somebody, but Maurice doesn't know he killed anybody. But I'm like, again, just give it to the nun. Yeah. Give that to the nun. It'll be cool.
There's actually one cool moment I did like in this movie at the beginning, when the priest burns alive and he's in the church and they're dead, you do see Maurice walking away from the church in the shadows, and you realize, it's Maurice. Like, you realize it's Maurice rather quickly. But the shadow he casts is the nun. You see the shadow of the nun. It shrinks down into him.
Yeah.
Which is a cool little movie trick, and I really like that. And I thought that'd be a cool way to continue to do this throughout the movie, to see shadows of the nun in Maurice. But they never did it again. Like, that was a really cool, like, you kind of see the nun like absorbing back into him through shadows. I thought that was really cool. That was a really cool, like, little trick with the camera and the way they did the effects.
There's tons of cool craftsmanship in this. Michael Chaves is good. Like, I'll go see any other Michael Chaves movie based on this. Like, he made something that looks great. Like the craftsmanship is great. I just need the story to match it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get into one of our favorite categories, Patrick, which is remake, sequel, or leave it alone. And now, obviously, this is already a sequel, but we're going to basically ask the question here with The Nun 2 specifically. Should they remake it? Should they make a sequel? Or should they just leave it alone and not do anything else? So, Patrick, with The Nun 2, remake, sequel, leave it alone.
Well, Damon, I was all set to say leave it alone and just be like, you know what? If you're not going to give us none, then go away. But I'm going to do something sacrilege here, Damon. I'm going to say, give me The Nun 3. And I changed my mind mid-podcast because of something you said. You said, just make me a nun slasher. In The Nun 3, the nun gets like a new relic. Let's call it the Dick of St. Peter. I don't know. and all this relic makes her want to do is collect bodies. And so you just got to get the dick out of her hand and stop her from killing people. And it's just going to be a movie where it's a race against time to get Valak before she kills again. Give me the Nun again. I'm giving you a third chance here. Third time's a charm. Give me the Nun 3 and give me just a nun slasher the way Damon posited one.
And to your esteemed credit, I had the exact same thought, not the exact same movie, even though I suggested it. I am going to suggest a sequel as well. As weird as it sounds, I'm not like The Nun, and I'm not like The Nun 2. But there's still hope that in a Nun 3, you can give me what I want, which is the freaking nun.
Give me the nun.
And if you just turn into the slasher, as I suggested, I am fine with that. You don't even really need to introduce more mythology. It's a demon who survives on scaring the shit out of people and killing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And you can just boil it down to that. I don't even need a relic. Just cool kills in some setting of whatever it is. It's a church, it's a monastery, it's a private upscale school, turn it into freaking Scream for all I care. Just make it where the nun just kills a whole lot of people. And you get 7 or 8 really cool scenes with the nun until we get to the ending. And by the way, if you're going to do another sequel, please stop with the whole blood kills it, because clearly it doesn't work.
Clearly blood does not kill Valak.
Yeah, give me something else. Give me a dog pisses on her and it kills her, like, Freddy is resurrected in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. Something. Give me some other way.
Fiery dog piss.
The blood thing has clearly not worked, so give me something else. But yes, I'm weirdly saying give me the Nun 3. Just give me a better Nun movie.
And I want in that final breakdown, like, maybe it's still Sister Deborah and Sister Irene, and Sister Deborah can go, of course, we'll use the blood of Christ again. We'll do that. And I want Irene to turn to her and go, that shit doesn't fucking work.
Yeah.
How do I know? Because it's twice already. It doesn't work. So we're doing something else.
Yeah, if you're going to do the relic, make the relic like some weird cross from ancient times that if it's buried, if it's buried with Valak, it actually eradicates it. It doesn't just stop it. It literally eviscerates the demon from being into existence.
Something, yeah, like
shit.
Yeah, you gotta
Something
like bury her in Christ's tomb or something.
whatever, something that,
Something.
give me something like that. Like, that's all it has to be. And so once again, like, we're just remaking, they already kind of remade the first one and the second one. Give it to me again, but just give me a purpose and give me the nun killing people. That's what I want. I turned it into Jason. I don't need it to be highbrow. I don't need it to be Hereditary. I certainly don't need it to be Midsommar. Give me a movie that's just a cool movie with the nun killing a bunch of people, and I will 100% show up, watch, enjoy it, and probably give it an incredible review.
Yeah, you're probably gonna. That's the fucking craziest thing is we have two nun movies in a row. We didn't like either one, and we can't wait to see the next one. What the fuck is going on?
I mean, I know I saw this thing the other day. I think it was on TikTok where someone had like the time you see certain like villains, and I think it was like the Halloween movies. Like in the first Halloween movie, Michael Myers is in it for like 10 minutes or 11 minutes or whatever, and then like every other movie is like 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever. I'm not kidding when I say, like, if you really total up, like, outside of that last scene in The Nun, where it's basically like just a battle scene between the nun and Sister Irene and Father Burke and Maurice, which lasts about 5 or 6 minutes. If you cut that out and you total up the amount of time the actual nun is on screen, it can't be more than 5 minutes total in these two movies. Like, it can't be. Like, all together, the time you actually see the nun, outside of that one scene at the end, if you take that out, which I said is like 5 or 6 minutes, I guarantee you she's not, the nun itself is not on screen for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, you might be right. It really is just these briefest of scenes, and they're cool. They're cool setups, and then they just go, and then they move into something else, and you're like, shit.
Like this movie, it was Maurice. It was the Maurice.
Yeah, yeah. Or you give Maurice or the Goat Boy Valak's job.
The goat. All right, Patrick. One another category that we've kind of fallen in love with, which is, can we survive this horror film? I know we've talked about this before with The Nun. With The Nun 2, can we survive this horror film? I really, really hope you and I aren't hanging out at a boarding school for teen girls, so I'm going to say ahead of time that's kind of creepy.
I thought it was a bad idea to put Maurice there. I was like, this is the 50s, you guys. Like, I don't think he should be here.
Yeah, this is weird. This is a little weird. But yeah, can we survive this horror film, Patrick?
You know what, Damon? I'm going to call an audible. I'm not going to ask if we can survive this horror film. I'm going to ask you, can we survive The Nun 3? Can we do it? Can we go see The Nun 3 and face down whether we're going to get Valak or not? I don't know. I don't know, Damon. I didn't know last time, because last time I didn't get a lot of answers. This time I still don't know. Like, this is the oddest franchise within a franchise that I've ever dealt with, ever.
Yeah. You're 100% right. Yeah, you're right. Like, can we survive another Nun film? Because we left the Nun 1 kind of excited a little bit about the Nun 2, thinking like,
but we were beat down.
Yeah, we were. They kind of like beat us down a little bit, and they're like, hold on now, like, you've been starving. Here's a cracker. We're like, what kind of cracker? And then we're like, you got a Ritz over there. Okay,
you got a nun cracker.
Yeah, you got a nun cracker.
No nun crackers.
Yeah.
Huh. That sucks.
And so this time they teased us. They're like, hey, you want a Mountain Dew? No. Here's Thunder Lightning from Walmart. That's what you're getting. Yeah, let's hope that if they do a Nun 3, yeah, like I said, like, will we be there? Yes. Will we review it? Yes. But please, for the love of God, give us the Nun. That's all we want, man. That's why I said turn it into the Nun slasher. Give me a Nun slasher movie where Nun just kills a bunch of people, and then they stop her somehow. They consecrate her body like Freddy and Dream Warriors. I don't care. Give me something to where we actually get the Nun for long periods of time and cool kills.
Well said.
All right, last category, Patrick, as always, is it scary? And I'm gonna kick things off in this one myself and say this, Patrick. This film is not, even though I said there were a couple of good scares. There were legitimately good scares. When I left the theater, I was talking to my girlfriend. I was like, what'd you think? And she's like, I didn't like it. And I was like, yeah, I didn't like it either, but weirdly, it was less scary than the other one. The Nun actually had some scary parts. Like, there were some legitimately creepy, scary parts in The Nun. The Nun 2 wasn't scary. Outside of a couple of good jump scares, yours, of course, you're talking about the hallway with the crows, and mine with the trick with the magazines and the lighting, it wasn't really scary. And again, I think part of that goes back to the Nun not being in it, because every time the Nun is on screen, I'm immediately like,
yeah,
I'm got a puckered butthole at
Yeah,
that point.
it's a pucker factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm all for it. When you show me the Nun, I immediately get scared because the Nun is scary. When I left the theater, I was like, that actually wasn't really a scary movie. Like it didn't feel scary to me.
Yeah. No, this is like almost more drama than horror. It was less scary. There's still the scare elements. It got you and me. So yeah. On some level, it's scary, but it's less scary than the Nun, and that in itself is scary.
Yeah. I don't know. Give me. I want.
You know what, Damon? You and I care too much.
We do.
We care too. That's the moral of this podcast is Damon and Patrick care too much. Because some people go, man, I just sit down and watch the damn Nun. I don't give a shit about all that. I don't care. You and I care, and that's why we do this. That's why we put out podcasts 52 weeks a year.
But here's the thing, Patrick. Here's the thing. Even if you're sitting at home right now and you're thinking, God, these fuckers are complaining too much. Here's the one thing you can't disagree with us on. And I guarantee everyone listening right now, if you made it this far and you're listening and you're thinking, God, these guys are assholes. They really don't like this film. Just agree with me on one. You only have to agree with us on one thing. There's not enough Nun. Like, this is a movie about the Nun. Imagine if you saw Nightmare on Elm Street and there was 3 minutes of Freddy Krueger. You'd be pretty pissed off. Or if there was a Friday the 13th movie outside of part 1 and there's 3 minutes of Jason, you'd be pretty pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is. And I understand The Nun is not a slasher movie, although I've now suggested to make it a slasher movie because I would like that better. But it's still, you literally called, if you just want to call it The Conjuring, Sister Irene, or you want to call it The Conjuring, The Eyes of St. Lucy, and the Nun pops up, okay, you're giving me something else. You're literally calling the movie The Nun, and the Nun's not in the frickin' movie.
Yeah. I think our frustration doesn't come because we're not haters. We don't play that game here. I certainly, definitely don't. I don't agree with it. I don't come into anything ready to hate it. I was so ready to like The Nun too. I was ready to like it. Like, I didn't want to come back and go, oh man, The Nun needs all this extra stuff in it. I'm upset because I like the idea. That's why. It's not because like I want to hate on The Nun. Some people are ready to hate on Marvel movies. They're ready to hate on Star Wars. They're ready to hate on DC. They can't wait to shit on it. That's they're waiting for that. That's not us. We're waiting to like it. We're waiting to enjoy it. And I love The Nun and I want to see more Nun.
Every single horror film I see, I want to like it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being honest about that. I love horror as a genre. I want to like all horror movies. Now, clearly we don't. That's impossible.
Right.
But I would say I go into every single horror movie I watch with probably a better, more positive attitude than almost any other film out there, except when I go see Quentin Tarantino films or maybe Martin Scorsese, just because they've set the bar so high for themselves. I just expect greatness because that's what those guys do.
Right.
But outside of that, every horror film I sit down in, I go in with a pretty positive attitude because I want to like them. I don't go in with a negative attitude and being a hater and saying, oh, here we go. Never. No. So when I come out of a film and I'm disappointed, it's coming from a place of genuine, care, like a place of genuine feeling for a film because I want to like this. I, like you, was legitimately excited to go see this thinking, you know what? I bet they're going to kind of fix what went wrong in The Nun 1, and they're going to give us what we want in The Nun 2. And then weirdly, when I walked out, I was like, they gave us less of what we wanted in The Nun 2. I was like, how did that happen? Like, how did that, like, what happened here? Like, they actually gave me less of what I wanted. I was like, this is weird. Yeah. So, no, and like I said, I don't find this film particularly scary, although there are a couple of good jump scares. Performances are great. Cinematography is great. Direction great. I don't know all the behind the scenes stuff. And when you're talking about a story and script, even you can say you had a mandate. This is point A, point B, and point C. This is where we need to get to. This is how we need to get there. Okay. And you may not have a lot of wiggle room for any other premise or plot. But again, that's just, this movie just did not, and it goes far beyond the nun being like the character we want to see. There's so many other problems, but that's the easiest one to fix. Give me more nun, give me more Bonnie Aarons, and I'll be at least somewhat happy with that.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it.
Yeah. All this movie just needed was way more nun. And I probably would have been like, yeah, this movie fucks because it's got way more nun in it. And it just, it had less nun.
At least that. Give me that. Like I said, it's not like every Friday the 13th movie has the deepest plot. Okay?
No. God, I get out of the way, plot. Just give me Jason fucking killing people. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, that's what I'm saying.
That's the formula I need.
Yeah, give me the nun killing people. Give me some cool, creative nun kills, and give me like 10 of them, and I'll be a happy camper. Like, I'm wearing a Terrifier 2 shirt right now. I'm not saying like that didn't have a good plot. I like Terrifier 2, but Art the Clown just kills people. It's just really like he's a brutal killer, and that's part of the enjoyment of those films. Is that?
Yeah.
If you went to an Art the Clown, if you went to Terrifier 2 and Art the Clown's in it for 4 minutes and he doesn't kill anyone, you'd be pretty pissed off.
You would.
Just saying.
No, it's true, man. Listen, we're saying this because we like the nun. We want more nun.
Yeah, give me more Bonnie Aarons. Bonnie Aarons is incredible. Give me 20 minutes of Bonnie Aarons in this movie, and I will cheer. I'll applaud. Give it to me.
That's all this movie needed was 20 minutes of Bonnie Aarons. Yeah. Truth be told, like that's kind of just all that was missing.
I could probably look past the weird Eyes of St. Lucie bullshit and all the other weirdness that happened in this movie. If you just give me the nun and Bonnie Aarons killing a bunch of people, I'd probably be like, you know what? Still, she was snapping necks and ripping off legs and killing people left and right and whatever. Like that's cool, but no, we had to have a demon goat and Maurice and Eyes of St. Lucie and so.
I can't wait to make Nun 7. That's my goal is to make Nun 7 the New Blood.
Oh, the New Blood, yes, the Nun 7, yes. They're going to come out with the Nun, the New Beginning, and it's going to be someone pretending to be the nun. It's not actually the nun. The Nun Takes Manhattan.
Oh, I want it.
That's the one I'm waiting for. The nun in Times Square. Instead of the magazines, it's the one of the big billboards on Times Square turns into the nun.
Yeah, give me it. I want it. If it means more Bonnie Aarons, I want it.
Yeah. All right, folks, that is our episode. We're a little downtrodden right now, so we're going to go splice together the 8 scenes the nun's in between 2 movies and watch those instead. Want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes into the podcast. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and, of course, over on our YouTube channel. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. We're trying to build our audience over there, so please subscribe. You can even see us over there and see the disappointment on our faces. If you got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, hit us up anytime on social media. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook, and you can find us on Instagram. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. We do try to respond to everybody, so please go over there and like our channels. Send us messages. And if you have any other questions, comments, or movies you'd like to review, you can also send us email. That is rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's rotlivingdead@gmail.com. Or you can just hit us up on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And a big thank you, as always, to everyone that tunes in. We appreciate it every single week. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Peace.